My name is Helene, and I'm 32 years old. I thought my marriage of 7 years to James was absolutely perfect. We had successful careers, me as an interior designer and him as a financial analyst. Our social life among Boston's elite circles seemed flawless. That is, until that one lavish dinner that changed everything. I had always believed my husband was completely devoted to me. I never imagined his words at that dinner would shatter my world and set me on a path I never expected. If you're watching this video, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Please like and subscribe if you want to hear how my silent revenge unfolded. I met James at a charity gala 9 years ago. He was tall, confident, and had this smile that made everyone in the room feel special. Our eyes met across a crowded ballroom, and within minutes we were deep in conversation about our dreams and ambitions. "I've never met anyone who understands me like you do," he told me on our third date. His words felt genuine, and I believed them with my whole heart. Our romance was a whirlwind. 6 months after meeting, he proposed on a rooftop restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. The ring was spectacular. A family heirloom, he said, had been waiting for the perfect woman. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was the talk of Boston that spring. We married at the historic Fairmont Copley Plaza with 300 guests and no expense spared. James wanted everything to be perfect, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the 10-tier cake. Looking back now, I see his obsession with appearances started long before our marriage began to crumble. "We're going to build an amazing life together," he whispered during our first dance. I believed him completely. After a 3-week honeymoon in the Mediterranean, we returned to start our married life. With our combined savings, we purchased a beautiful brownstone in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. I spent months renovating it to create our dream home, using my interior design skills to transform each room. Our life together seemed charmed. James was attentive and romantic in those early years. He would surprise me with weekend getaways and thoughtful gifts. On our first anniversary, he filled our bedroom with white roses, my favorite, and presented me with a diamond bracelet that matched my engagement ring. "Only the best for my perfect wife," he said, clasping it around my wrist. My interior design business was thriving. I had started small, helping friends decorate their apartments, but soon word spread about my eye for detail and ability to create spaces that felt both luxurious and livable. Within 3 years of our marriage, I had 6 employees and a waiting list of clients. James was climbing the corporate ladder at his financial firm, impressing his bosses with his analytical skills and charm. He seemed genuinely proud of my success, often bragging about my latest projects to his colleagues. "My wife is the most talented designer in Boston," he would say at company functions, his arm wrapped possessively around my waist. We socialized with Boston's most successful couples: doctors, lawyers, tech entrepreneurs, and finance executives. Our dinner parties became sought-after invitations, and we were regularly featured in local society magazines as a power couple to watch. During this time, I became close friends with Sophia, a surgeon I met when she hired me to redesign her home office. Unlike many in our social circle, Sophia was refreshingly authentic. She didn't care about appearances or status values I had once held dear, but had begun to compromise on to fit into James's world. "There's something about your husband that doesn't quite add up," Sophia told me once after a dinner party. I laughed it off, but a small part of me recognized the truth in her words. Looking back, I can now see the subtle narcissistic tendencies James displayed from the beginning, his need to be the center of attention at every gathering. The way he would subtly undermine my opinions in public, then later claim he was just teasing. How conversations always circled back to his achievements. But I was too in love, too invested in our perfect life together to acknowledge these warning signs. "James is just confident," I would tell myself. "He works in a competitive field. That's what makes him successful." I believed we had the perfect marriage. I thought we were living the dream. I had no idea that beneath the surface, cracks were already forming in the foundation of everything we had built. The red flags were there all along, subtle but unmistakable now that I look back. Early in our marriage, James would make small comments about my wardrobe or suggest improvements to my appearance. "That dress is nice, but don't you think something more fitted would look better for this event?" He would say, his tone casual, but his eyes critical. At first, I took his suggestions as helpful advice. After all, he moved in high-powered financial circles and knew the expectations. But gradually, these suggestions became more frequent and pointed. James also began to exert control in other areas. He questioned my spending despite my business bringing in substantial income. He had opinions about which clients I should take on, favoring those with social connections that could benefit him. "You should prioritize the Andersons project," he would say. "Robert Anderson is on the board of several companies. Those connections could be valuable." As James rose through the ranks at his firm, he became increasingly obsessed with status and appearances. Our home had to be showcase ready at all times. The cars we drove, the restaurants we frequented, even the friends we kept. Everything was chosen to project an image of success and perfection. Around the 3rd year of our marriage, James's boss Andrew became a more prominent figure in our lives. Andrew was older, divorced, and seemed to have a particular interest in mentoring James. They would often work late together, and James was regularly invited to Andrew's exclusive poker nights. It was during one of these evenings that I first heard about Natalie. "James never told you about Natalie?" Andrew asked with surprise at a company Christmas party, his 4th scotch loosening his tongue. "They were quite the couple in college. She's done well for herself. Modelling in Milan, last I heard." James quickly changed the subject and later dismissed it entirely. "Ancient history," he said when I brought it up on the ride home. "We dated in college. It wasn't serious." But something in his dismissive tone made me curious. Later that week, I searched for Natalie online and found her immediately. Natalie Rivers, a successful model turned fashion executive. She was stunning with long blonde hair and the kind of bone structure photographers dream about. I discovered James still followed her on social media. Her life looked glamorous. Fashion shows in Paris, yacht parties in Cannes, charity galas in New York. So different from our Boston existence, no matter how elite we pretended to be. As time went on, James became increasingly critical of my appearance, my weight, my hair, my makeup. Nothing seemed to meet his standards anymore. "You might want to step up your gym routine," he suggested after seeing me undress one night. "Those client dinners are starting to show." I was a size 6, hardly overweight by any standard, but his comments stung. I found myself scrutinizing my reflection, seeing flaws where before I'd seen a confident, attractive woman. Trying to please him, I spent more time at the gym. I bought more expensive clothes and spent hours getting ready for events. The more effort I made, the more critical he became. The worst incident came during a benefit gala. James and I were seated with several clients of his firm, including a former beauty queen turned philanthropist named Amanda. "Now that's how a woman should present herself," James whispered to me, nodding toward Amanda in her couture gown. "You could learn something from her." That night, I cried in the bathroom of the venue before composing myself and returning to his side with a perfect smile. The next day, I called Sophia and met her for coffee. I shared some of my concerns, though not the depth of my hurt. "Helene, this isn't normal," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "The way he speaks to you. It's not okay." "All couples have issues," I replied, already making excuses for him. "He's under a lot of pressure at work." "Pressure doesn't give anyone the right to make their partner feel less than," Sophia countered, her eyes concerned. "I worry about you." I assured her everything was fine, but her words stayed with me. Still, I convinced myself these were just normal marriage struggles. Every relationship had its challenges, right? We were still the perfect couple in everyone else's eyes, and I was determined to keep it that way. Little did I know that the real test of our marriage was just around the corner, waiting at a dinner table in Boston's most exclusive restaurant. The invitation arrived on heavy cream stationery with gold embossing. Andrew was celebrating his promotion to managing director at the firm, and he was hosting a dinner at Menton Boston's most exclusive restaurant. It was the kind of evening that would be photographed for society pages where connections were made and reputations cemented. "This is a big night for us," James said, straightening his custom-made tuxedo in our bedroom mirror. "Andrew has the ear of the CEO. Making a good impression could fast-track my path to partner. I had spent weeks preparing for this evening. My dress was a deep emerald silk that had cost more than my first car, tailored perfectly to my frame after the recent weight loss James had suggested. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup flawless. The diamond necklace James had given me for our anniversary gleamed at my throat. "You'll do," James said, barely glancing at me before checking his phone. Menton was a vision that night, transformed for Andrew's celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with white orchids and silver candelabras. Boston's elite mingled over champagne, their conversations a gentle hum beneath classical music. We were escorted to the main table where Andrew greeted us warmly. "James Helene, perfect timing," he said, clapping James on the shoulder before kissing my cheek. "There's someone here I thought James might like to reconnect with." My stomach tightened as Andrew turned to introduce a striking blonde woman in a red dress that seemed painted on her slender frame. "You remember Natalie Rivers, don't you, James? She's back in Boston, heading up the North American division of Vogue." The world seemed to slow as I watched James's face transform. The polite smile he wore for networking events melted into something softer, more genuine than any expression I'd seen in years. "Natalie," he breathed, taking her offered hand but holding it a beat too long. "It's been ages." "James Whitman," she replied with a dazzling smile. "Still breaking hearts in Boston, I see." She turned to me, extending her hand. "You must be Helene. I've heard wonderful things about your design work." Her grip was firm, her smile seemingly sincere. Up close, Natalie was even more beautiful than her pictures. Flawless skin, bright blue eyes, and that indefinable quality that makes some women impossible to ignore. "Lovely to meet you." I managed fighting the sudden insecurity that washed over me. As we took our seats, I realized with horror that the place cards positioned Natalie directly across from James, with me 2 seats away, separated by Andrew. The first course arrived with premium champagne followed by wine pairings for each subsequent dish. I noticed James's glass being refilled more frequently than usual. His eyes rarely left Natalie as she charmed the table with stories of fashion weeks and celebrity encounters. "Remember that summer in Cape Cod?" she asked James at one point, leaning forward so her pendant dangled provocatively. "Your parents' beach house. How could I forget?" James replied, his voice warm with nostalgia. "Best summer of my life." Best summer. The words stung. We had spent 5 summers together, and apparently none compared to his time with her. As the evening progressed and the alcohol flowed freely, James became increasingly attentive to Natalie. He laughed too loudly at her jokes, found excuses to touch her arm during conversation, and twice refilled her wine glass while mine sat empty. By dessert, the atmosphere had shifted. Andrew was telling a story about a disastrous date when James, now visibly intoxicated, interrupted. "Speaking of beautiful women," he said, raising his glass toward Natalie, "some women just have it, don't they? Natalie hasn't aged a day since college." He leaned forward, his voice carrying clearly across the silent table. "Still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." The table fell silent. Andrew's wife gasped softly. I felt 8 pairs of eyes dart to my face, then quickly away, embarrassment and pity in their glances. My cheeks burned, but years of maintaining appearances in uncomfortable social situations came to my rescue. I smiled tightly, took a deliberate sip of water, and turned to ask Andrew's wife about her recent charity auction, as if nothing had happened. Inside, something shattered. Natalie, to her credit, looked mortified. "James, that's hardly appropriate," she said, shooting me an apologetic glance. James seemed oblivious to the damage he'd done. "Just stating facts," he slurred, reaching for more wine only to have Andrew smoothly move the bottle away. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur. I made appropriate small talk, laughed at the right moments, and thanked our host with practiced grace. No one would know from looking at me that I was dying inside. The car ride home was excruciating. James loosened his tie and leaned his head against the window of the Uber. "You're overreacting," he said before I had even spoken. It was a compliment to an old friend. "Don't make this into something it's not. You called another woman the most beautiful you've ever seen. In front of me, your wife and everyone we know professionally." I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just words, Helene. Don't be so insecure." I turned to look out my own window, watching the Boston skyline blur through unshed tears. In that moment, I realized the man beside me was a stranger, and our perfect marriage was nothing but an elaborate facade. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay rigid on my side of our king-sized bed, listening to James's deep, untroubled breathing. How could he sleep so peacefully after humiliating me? The question circled my mind like a vulture as moonlight cast shadows across our bedroom ceiling. Around 4 a.m. I slipped out of bed and into our home office. Illuminated by the soft glow of my laptop, I found myself typing Natalie's name into search engines, torturing myself with images of her perfection. Article after article chronicled her rise from model to fashion executive. In every photo, she radiated the effortless beauty that had captivated my husband. When dawn broke, I returned to bed, feigning sleep until James's alarm sounded. He showered and dressed for work as if nothing had happened, whistling as he selected a tie. "I've got a breakfast meeting," he said, barely glancing my way. "Don't wait up tonight. Dinner with the Shanghai investors." The moment I heard his car pull away, something inside me broke loose. With trembling hands, I reached for his iPad, the one device he sometimes left behind. We knew each other's passwords, an illusion of transparency in our marriage. Or so I had thought. His messages loaded and my heart stopped. There they were, dozens of exchanges with Natalie stretching back 3 months. The dinner hadn't been their first reunion as he'd pretended. They had been meeting for lunches, drinks, catching-up sessions that James had never mentioned. "I wish I could see you alone. Remember that thing you used to do? Our hotel has an amazing view of the harbour. Next trip to NYC, I'm all yours like old times." The messages became increasingly intimate, stopping just short of explicit, maintaining plausible deniability, while crossing every boundary of marriage. Dates of their meetings aligned perfectly with James's business trips and client dinners. The Shanghai investors he was meeting tonight didn't exist. He was meeting her. The screen blurred as tears finally spilled over. I must have sat frozen for an hour before the iPad dinged with a new message from her. "Last night was complicated. Maybe we should cool things until you figure out your situation." His immediate response. "She doesn't suspect anything. Don't worry. See you tonight, usual place." When James returned home to change before his dinner meeting, I confronted him with the iPad. His face transformed from shock to anger in seconds. "You're spying on me now, invading my privacy," he deflected, voice rising. "You've been lying to me for months," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You're being crazy. Natalie and I are old friends. These messages are innocent." "Innocent?" I scrolled to particularly damning exchanges. "You're planning to meet her tonight at a hotel for drinks in the lobby bar," he exclaimed, snatching the iPad. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you about reconnecting with her. You're too insecure to handle adult friendships." The gaslighting was so blatant it left me speechless. I stood in our bedroom, The room I had designed with such care, every detail chosen to create our perfect sanctuary, and felt like a stranger in my own life. "I can't believe you don't trust me," James continued, his voice softening to the manipulative tone I now recognized. "After everything we've built together, this hurts me, Helene." Somehow, he had twisted my discovery of his betrayal into my failure as a wife, and despite everything I'd seen with my own eyes, a part of me still questioned myself. Was I overreacting? Was this normal? "I need to get ready," he said finally. "We'll talk about your trust issues when I get back." After he left, I collapsed onto our bedroom floor. The sobs came from somewhere primal, tearing through my body until I could barely breathe. I called Sophia, barely coherent. She arrived 20 minutes later with ice cream and wine, finding me still on the floor, surrounded by tissues. "I knew something was off with him," Sophia said after I showed her the messages, "but this is beyond what I imagined." "He made me feel crazy for questioning him," I whispered. Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. "That's what men like him do. They cheat, lie, and then make you feel like the problem is your reaction rather than their behavior." She squeezed my hand. "This isn't your fault, Helene. What do I do now?" "First, we figure out if there's more you don't know," she said pragmatically. "Men who lie about one thing usually lie about others." That evening, with Sophia's support, I began a deeper investigation. In James's home office, I found financial statements he'd hidden from me, separate accounts I knew nothing about, large withdrawals coinciding with his business trips. He's been diverting money. I realized the betrayal deepening with each discovery. Later, alone in our walk-in closet, surrounded by designer clothes he'd insisted I needed to look the part of his successful wife, I reached absolute rock bottom. Sitting on the floor among shoes that cost thousands, handbags he'd given me to keep up appearances, I finally saw the truth. I had been living in a beautiful cage decorated to his specifications, playing a role in his perfect life narrative. The woman I had been before meeting James, independent, confident, creative, had been slowly erased. In her place stood a careful construction, a wife designed to enhance his image rather than exist as her own person. As this realization washed over me, something unexpected happened. Beneath the pain, beneath the humiliation and grief, I felt a flicker of something powerful awakening, rage. I spent 3 days in a fog of grief, barely eating or sleeping. Sophia checked on me regularly, bringing food I couldn't taste and reassurance that did little to soothe the ache in my chest. "You need to think strategically now," she said on the 4th day, opening my curtains to let in light I didn't want. "James isn't just a cheater. He's a manipulator who's been gaslighting you for years." Her words penetrated the haze of my despair. "What do you mean strategically?" "I mean James has spent years undermining your confidence while building his life on your talent and money. You need to protect yourself." That afternoon, I showered, put on real clothes for the first time in days, and made an appointment with Patricia Hendricks, reputed to be Boston's most cutthroat divorce attorney. Patricia's office overlooked Boston Harbor, the water sparkling in the afternoon sun. She listened without interruption as I detailed my marriage and recent discoveries, her face betraying nothing. "Here's what you need to understand, Mrs. Whitman," she said when I finished. "Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, meaning assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. As the higher earner in your marriage, you have financial leverage many women don't. I make more than James." This surprised me, as he always acted as though his income was our primary support. "According to the tax returns you brought, your design business has out-earned his salary for the last 3 years. She leaned forward. "But before we discuss finances, I want to address the emotional abuse you've described, the controlling behavior criticism and gaslighting. We'll document this thoroughly." For 2 hours, Patricia outlined a comprehensive strategy. I shouldn't confront James yet. Instead, I should gather evidence, secure my finances, and prepare for a swift, decisive divorce. "The element of surprise will be crucial," she advised, Men like your husband don't respond well to losing control. The next day, I met with a financial advisor Patricia recommended. We reviewed my assets, business accounts, and joint investments with James. The good news, he explained, is that your business is already protected as a separate entity. And the brownstone is primarily in your name since you contributed 70% of the down payment. James always acted like he paid for everything, I said, the realization of his deception deepening. That's not supported by the financial records, the advisor confirmed. Your design business has been the family's primary income source since its third year. Over the following weeks, I developed a comprehensive exit plan with professional help. I documented James's emotional abuse, saved his messages with Natalie, and collected evidence of financial deception. I secured my most important documents and irreplaceable mementos, storing them in a safe deposit box James knew nothing about, all while maintaining a perfect facade at home. "You seem different lately," James commented one evening, looking up from his phone. "Less needy." "Just busy with the Robertson project," I replied, forcing a smile, while mentally calculating how soon I could file the divorce papers Patricia had prepared. The pivotal moment came unexpectedly. I was working late in my home office when I overheard James on the phone in the next room, his voice low and intimate. "It's all coming together," he said, unaware I could hear every word. "I just need a few more months to move assets around. Yes, I know you're tired of waiting. The prenup protects me, but I want to make sure she can't touch anything important. She has no idea. We'll have our fresh start, just be patient." My blood ran cold. James wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to leave me after hiding assets. He and Natalie were plotting their future together, while he systematically prepared to discard me with as little financial consequence as possible. In that moment, a strange calm settled over me. The last lingering doubts evaporated. The path forward wasn't just clear, it was illuminated like a runway guiding me to freedom. James had taught me well how to hide behind a perfect smile while plotting something entirely different. Now I would use that education against him. "You seem happier," James remarked one evening as I served the pasta primavera he preferred on Wednesdays. "Finally getting over your paranoia about Natalie," I smiled, passing him the Cabernet he favoured. "I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe I was overreacting." He looked pleased, exactly as I'd anticipated. Men like James needed to believe they controlled the narrative. My apparent submission fed his ego and lowered his guard precisely when I needed him least suspicious. "I'm glad you're being reasonable," he said, reaching for my hand across our dining table. "I've always said you're at your best when you don't overthink things." Behind my practiced smile, I was methodically executing the plan developed with Patricia. Each day brought another piece into position. I transferred my personal belongings to a secure storage unit in increments small enough that James wouldn't notice their absence. Important jewellery, irreplaceable photos, family heirlooms, anything with sentimental or significant financial value was quietly relocated. Working with my accountant, I secured my business completely. Though already established as a separate entity, we installed additional protections to ensure James couldn't make claims against it during divorce proceedings. "Your husband has been representing himself as a partner in your business in some circles," my accountant informed me. "He's taken credit for design decisions and business strategies in conversations with investors and potential clients." This news should have shocked me, but I was beyond surprise at James's deceptions. Instead, I used the information strategically, reaching out to key clients to subtly clarify the structure of my business and reinforce my role as sole creative director. "Just updating my professional contacts," I explained when James questioned the increased client communication. Meanwhile, I worked with Patricia to prepare comprehensive divorce papers that would blindside James with their thoroughness. Every financial account, property, deed tax document, and business record was scrutinized. His patterns of emotional abuse were documented through saved texts, emails, and my detailed journal entries. "We'll be ready to file the moment you give the word," Patricia assured me. The most unexpected development came through Sophia's network of hospital colleagues. Her friend in hospital administration mentioned that James's company was conducting an internal ethics investigation concerning inappropriate use of client information. Apparently, someone has been using confidential financial data to make personal investments ahead of company announcements, Sophia explained over coffee. They haven't named names yet, but several transactions have been traced to accounts with connections to James. This information was too valuable to ignore. Through Patricia, I contacted Andrew confidentially, sharing evidence of questionable transactions I'd discovered in James's hidden financial records. "I can't say I'm entirely surprised," Andrew admitted during our discreet meeting. "There have been suspicious patterns for months. We just couldn't pinpoint the source." With Andrew's assurance that my cooperation would remain confidential, another piece fell into place. The professional community that James had so carefully cultivated would soon see him for what he truly was. While orchestrating these preparations, I maintained the role of devoted wife. I attended company functions on James's arm, hosted dinner parties for his colleagues, and never once let my mask slip. I even endured his increasingly transparent lies about late nights and business trips, knowing each deception brought me closer to freedom. The final element was finding my own space. With Sophia's help, I secured a beautiful apartment in a secure building across town, paying 6 months' rent in advance to ensure stability through the transition ahead. James announced his next business trip with typical self-importance. "Shanghai clients again. I'll be gone 4 days. Try not to redecorate the entire house while I'm away," he joked, kissing my cheek. I smiled and wished him safe travels, knowing from his hidden messages to Natalie that they were actually planning a romantic getaway to a luxury resort in Miami. This trip would give me the perfect opportunity to implement the final phase of my plan. "Have a wonderful trip," I said, watching him pack the expensive luggage I had given him last Christmas. "I'm sure it will be memorable." He had no idea just how memorable it would be, not just for the time with his mistress, but for the life-altering surprise that would await his return. The Miami trip with Natalie was James's biggest mistake, and my perfect opportunity. The moment his flight status showed departed, I sprang into action. First, I called the locksmith Patricia had recommended. By noon, every lock in our brownstone had been changed, security codes reset, and a new monitoring system installed. Next came the legal team. Patricia arrived with 2 associates and a courier to officially serve the divorce papers at James's office, ensuring they would be waiting on his desk upon his return. The filing includes a temporary restraining order preventing him from accessing joint accounts or entering the property without your permission, Patricia explained as we shared coffee in what had once been our kitchen. "Is that really necessary?" I asked, still uncomfortable with the confrontational nature of legal proceedings. "Absolutely. Men accustomed to control often react unpredictably when that control is threatened. This protects you legally and physically." With the legal groundwork laid, I focused on securing the home. James's more personal belongings, clothes, toiletries, and non-valuable items, were packed and moved to a storage facility with the access information included in the divorce papers. I was firm but fair, not seeking to deprive him of his possessions, but rather to establish clear boundaries. That evening, I met with my business team to inform them of the impending divorce and potential fallout. James may attempt to contact clients or claim involvement in projects, I warned them. All communication should be directed to our legal team. My staff, many of whom had witnessed James taking credit for my work over the years, were universally supportive. The final step involved the financial separation Patricia had carefully orchestrated. Joint accounts were frozen pending court review, while my personal and business accounts were secured with additional verification measures. The forensic accountant has documented every instance of James diverting funds, Patricia confirmed. His attempts to hide assets will actually strengthen our case. Throughout these 4 days, Sophia remained my rock, alternating between practical support and emotional reassurance. "You're doing the right thing," she reminded me as we shared wine the night before James's scheduled return. "This isn't revenge, it's justice." Meanwhile, unaware of the seismic shifts occurring in Boston, James continued his Miami rendezvous with Natalie. His occasional texts maintained the business trip facade. Important meetings all day, clients very impressed, extending trip by 1 day, breakthrough with Shanghai team, miss you. Bringing you something special from the duty-free. Each message strengthened my resolve. The man I had married, the man I had believed in and supported, had become a stranger constructing elaborate lies to cover his betrayal. On the morning James was set to return, I received a call from Andrew. "The Ethics Committee has suspended James pending a full investigation," he informed me. "I wanted you to hear it from me first. I'm sorry, Helene." "Don't be sorry," I replied calmly. "Just be thorough." By evening, my phone was buzzing constantly with messages from James. His flight had landed and reality was crashing down around him. First came confusion. "Why aren't my keys working?" Then anger. "What the hell, Helene? Call me now." Followed by panic. "Why is there divorce paperwork on my desk?" Finally, desperation. "Please talk to me. We can work this out." I didn't respond to a single message. Patricia had been clear. All communication should go through legal channels now. My silence was both self-protection and strategy. Reports filtered in through various channels. James had arrived at work to find himself locked out of the building, his personal items boxed up by security. His attempts to access our financial accounts were met with frozen authorizations. His frantic calls to colleagues went largely unanswered. Word of the ethics investigation had spread quickly. The final blow came when he tried to check into a luxury hotel using our joint credit card, only to have it declined. According to the concierge, who was a former client of mine, James was forced to call Natalie for help. "She didn't sound thrilled," my client reported with barely concealed satisfaction. "Something about not signing up for damaged goods." This particular detail didn't bring me joy. Natalie, for all her involvement with my husband, was just another player in James's manipulations. If anything, I felt a moment of solidarity with her, another woman discovering James's true nature. 3 days after his return, I received the first communication from James's hastily acquired attorney, a significantly less prestigious lawyer than he would have preferred, but apparently the only one willing to take his case given the ethics investigation and frozen assets. "They're asking for a meeting," Patricia informed me, "and offering generous terms if you'll consider reconciliation." I declined both offers. The home James had once used to showcase his success, the wife he had molded to fit his image, the social connections he had cultivated, all were now beyond his reach. The man who had spent years making me feel small had been reduced to his true dimensions. It wasn't revenge that drove me. It was reclamation of my home, my business, my identity, and most importantly, my worth. 6 months after that fateful dinner where James praised Natalie's beauty, our divorce was finalized. The journey to that point had been challenging, but ultimately transformative. The initial weeks after James's return from Miami were the most difficult. He vacillated between desperate pleas for reconciliation and vindictive attempts to damage my reputation and business. "He's following the predictable pattern," Patricia assured me as we reviewed his latest legal maneuvers. "First, they beg, then they threaten, then they try to punish. It means we're winning." True to her prediction, James eventually realized his position was untenable. The ethics investigation at his firm had uncovered substantial evidence of improper trading using client information. Criminal charges were being considered. His professional reputation was in tatters. Natalie had disappeared from his life completely. According to Boston's ever-efficient rumor mill, she had issued a statement to mutual acquaintances, distancing herself from James and claiming she had been misled about the status of his marriage. "She's saying she had no idea you two were still together," Sophia reported after a hospital fundraiser where the gossip had circulated. "Apparently, James told her you had been separated for months and were discreetly divorcing." This information didn't surprise me. James had been manipulating multiple narratives simultaneously, telling each person what they needed to hear to serve his purposes. With his options dwindling and legal fees mounting, James finally agreed to Patricia's original settlement terms. The brownstone remained mine, my business was protected, and the financial accounts were divided according to contribution rather than equally, greatly favouring me as the primary earner. "He's essentially starting over at 40, Patricia noted as we signed the final papers, "while you're emerging stronger than ever." The aftermath of the divorce brought its own challenges. Some nights alone in the brownstone that had once been our shared home, grief would wash over me unexpectedly. Not grief for losing James, I had lost him long ago, or perhaps never truly had him, but for the years spent dimming my light to make room for his ego. Other times, anger would surface, at James for his betrayal, but also at myself for not recognizing the signs earlier. In those dark moments, Sophia became my lifeline. "You're allowed to feel everything, the anger, the grief, the relief, the confusion," she reminded me during a particularly difficult evening. "Healing isn't linear." Following her advice, I began therapy with Dr. Linden, a psychologist specializing in recovery from narcissistic relationships. Our weekly sessions helped me understand the patterns that had defined my marriage and develop tools to ensure I wouldn't repeat them. "You were systematically conditioned to doubt your perceptions," Dr. Linden explained, recognizing that conditioning is the first step to dismantling it. Slowly, painfully, I began to reconnect with the woman I had been before meeting James. I rediscovered interests he had dismissed as frivolous. My love of abstract painting, my passion for historical architecture, my enjoyment of solitary hikes in the Blue Hills. My business thrived without James's guidance. I expanded into commercial design, winning a prestigious contract to reimagine the interior of Boston's historic public library. The success was sweeter for being entirely my own. Most importantly, I rebuilt my circle of support. Beyond Sophia, whose unwavering friendship had been my anchor, I reconnected with old friends James had deemed not our kind of people, and formed new relationships based on authentic connection rather than social advantage. 6 months became a year. The pain receded, replaced by hard-won wisdom. I learned that James had relocated to Chicago, taking a significantly reduced position at a smaller firm, willing to overlook his ethical violations. The man who had once boasted of becoming partner before 40 was now starting over at entry level. Did this knowledge bring satisfaction? Not exactly. What I felt was closer to peace. The quiet understanding that justice often arrives in its own time and on its own terms. The final lesson came unexpectedly during a conversation with Dr. Linden in our last scheduled session. "When you first came to me, you described your motivation as revenge," she noted. "How would you describe it now?" I considered the question carefully, reflecting on the journey of the past 18 months. "It wasn't revenge," I finally answered. "It was reclamation. I wasn't trying to hurt James as much as he hurt me. I was fighting to reclaim everything he had taken, my confidence, my agency, my sense of self." Dr. Linden smiled. "That's the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge seeks to inflict equivalent pain. Justice seeks to restore balance." As I left her office that day, walking through Boston's autumn-painted streets, I felt truly free for the first time in years. Free from the need for James's approval, free from the exhausting performance of perfection, free from doubting my own worth. The brownstone I returned to had been completely redesigned, no longer a showcase for social climbing, but a true reflection of my aesthetic and comfort. The woman who unlocked its door was not the same one who had once decorated it to please a husband's critical eye. That evening, as I enjoyed a glass of wine on my terrace overlooking the city lights, I reflected on the strange, painful journey that had led me here. The lavish dinner where James had praised his ex's beauty had been the breaking point of my marriage, but also the beginning of my liberation. His cruel words had shattered the illusion I had been living in, forcing me to see the truth I had been avoiding. In that painful revelation lay the seeds of my freedom. The revenge that had initially motivated me, making James homeless and starting over just as he had planned for me, had transformed into something far more meaningful: the reclamation of my life on my own terms. I've shared this story not to encourage bitterness or retaliation, but to remind anyone listening that your worth is never determined by someone else's assessment. Sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is not striking back, but standing firmly in your truth and refusing to be diminished. Have you ever had to reclaim your sense of self after someone tried to diminish you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more authentic conversations about resilience and growth. Remember, sharing these stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the strength to reclaim your worth when others fail to see it.